Nothing in Elena's quiet life had ever prepared her for the way one simple neighbor could begin to change everything she thought she understood about loneliness. The morning began like any other, with the soft hum of a kettle in her kitchen and sunlight spilling across the worn wooden floor of her cozy home. She had lived in this neighborhood for over 60 years, long enough for every creak of the street to feel familiar, every shadow of the trees predictable, every silence almost comforting. But that morning, something felt different. As if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something she could not yet name. While she watered the flowers in her small garden, Adrian called from the other side of the fence, his voice warm and steady as always. "Good morning, Elena," he said, lifting a steaming mug of coffee in greeting. She smiled, softly adjusting a pot of roses near the edge of the garden and trying not to notice the way his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. "I think I've got everything under control, Adrian," she replied with a light laugh, though her heartbeat betrayed a different truth. Later that morning, Adrian returned from his side of the street, this time holding a small tray of cookies wrapped in a simple cloth, his expression almost shy, in a way Elena had never noticed before. "Thought you might like these," he said, quietly shifting his weight as if unsure whether he should stay or leave. Elena hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside, inviting him in, as she often did, though today, something about it felt different. They sat across the dining table, the quiet between them no longer empty, but filled with something unspoken, something that made the air feel heavier. He spoke about his work, about small details of his day, and she listened more closely than she intended, to noticing every pause in his voice. And when his hand brushed lightly against hers, while reaching for a plate, something inside her shifted in a way she could not easily explain. She told herself it meant nothing, just coincidence, just the warmth of a shared space, yet her thoughts kept returning to the feeling of that brief contact. Days passed like this, with Adrian finding small reasons to appear at her fence, helping with groceries, fixing small things, and always leaving just before the evening grew too dark. Elena began to notice how she waited for those moments more than she wanted to admit, how the sound of his voice seemed to stay with her long after he had gone. One evening, as the porch light flickered on and the air carried the scent of blooming jasmine, she found herself standing at the fence, without quite knowing why. Adrian appeared moments later, as if drawn by something he also could not explain, his presence calm, yet unsettling in its quiet intensity. He stopped when he saw her, their eyes meeting in a silence that felt heavier than words, as though something unspoken had finally reached its breaking point. Elena felt her breath catch, realizing that whatever had been growing between them could no longer stay hidden behind simple smiles and casual conversations. He took a slow step closer, hesitation clear in his expression, as if he was standing at the edge of something he could not take back. Adrian's voice broke the silence, first low and unsteady, as he finally spoke her name. "I need to tell you something," he said, pausing as though every word carried weight he could no longer hold back. Elena stood still, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The garden around them seemed to fade, the world narrowing, until there was only the space between them, charged and uncertain. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came, only breath and emotion tangled together in a way she could not yet understand. Adrian looked at her as if waiting for a lifetime answer in a single moment. Then he stepped closer, and everything she thought she knew about her heart began to change in that moment, forever. The silence between Elena and Adrian felt different the next day, heavier somehow, as if the air itself remembered everything that had almost been said but never fully spoken. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, standing at the fence under the porch light, watching his hesitation, as if he was holding back a truth too large to fit into ordinary words. For the first time in years, her thoughts were not calm or predictable. They were restless, tangled, and quietly afraid of what she might be feeling. Adrian, on the other hand, had not returned. Not that morning, not at midday, not even when the sky softened into evening. And that absence said more than his presence ever had. Elena tried to convince herself it was better this way, that whatever had almost happened between them was simply a misunderstanding, a fleeting emotion born from loneliness and familiarity. But the house felt too quiet now, the garden too still, as if everything had paused, waiting for something unresolved to continue. Every sound from the street made her look up. Every passing shadow made her wonder if it was him. And slowly, without permission, she began to miss him in a way that felt far deeper than she was willing to admit. It was late in the afternoon when she finally heard the familiar knock at her gate. Her heart reacted before her mind did. Adrian stood there, but not like before. He looked uncertain, almost vulnerable, holding something small in his hand. A single rose. The sight alone made something tighten in her chest. "May I come in?" he asked gently, his voice steady but careful, like someone stepping across fragile ground. Elena nodded, unable to trust her own voice. She stepped aside, watching as he walked toward the garden bench, where they had spent so many quiet conversations. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved softly through the flowers, carrying the scent of jasmine and something unspoken between them. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. "I didn't mean to disappear," he said quietly. "I just needed time to understand what I was feeling." Alina's fingers tightened slightly at her side. She could feel her heart beating faster again, the same way it had that night at the fence. "And what are you feeling?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. He looked at her then, fully, without hesitation this time. "You," he said simply. "It's you, Elena. It's always been you." The words landed softly, but completely, as if the world had shifted on its axis without warning. Elena felt her breath catch, her emotions rising in ways she could no longer control. Fear, warmth, uncertainty, longing, they all collided at once. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted honestly after a long pause. "This feeling, it's new for me." Adrian nodded as if he had expected that answer. He stepped a little closer but still kept space between them, respecting the boundary she hadn't fully voiced. "Then we take it slowly," he said. "No pressure, no expectations, just us." Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time allowed herself to consider what that might mean. Not a neighbor, not a passing comfort, something deeper, something real. The rose in his hand trembled slightly as he held it out, waiting, not demanding. After a long moment, she finally reached for it. Their fingers brushed again, brief, gentle, but enough to send a quiet certainty through her. And in that small, fragile connection, something unspoken finally began to change between them, as if love itself had decided to stop waiting. But neither of them noticed the figure standing just beyond the fence, watching silently before turning away into the fading light.